Anyway, all right. Well, now I am going to be talking to Professor Jeffrey Sachs right now. Hold on. Okay. All right. I don't know why. Hopefully we'll be able to. Hopefully he'll be on as well. Hello, hello. He's not on yet, but he'll be. Oh.
Hi.
All right, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, welcome to the broadcast. It's a real honor to have you. I am a big fan of your work, of your commentary. Nice. Very excited to have you on the broadcast today to talk about what's going on with the American empire, what the next steps are, and everything that has taken place in the Strait of Hormuz, and you know, in the as far as like America's force projection capabilities. But thank you for taking the time out to talk to us on this wonderful day.
Delighted, really delighted. Thanks a lot. Let's try to figure it out.
Okay, so there is a lot of inconsistency right now with everything that Donald Trump has said about how things are going, but that's expected. How much emphasis do you put into this as a student of history? Do you feel like this is deliberate? Is it madman theory, or is it just Donald Trump potentially being a little demented and oblivious to his own design?
I think somewhere between madman and delusional is helpful here, but it's against a backdrop of a much longer history. So none of this is out of the blue. None of this is only Trump, and none of this is only Trump and Netanyahu, though both of them are equal players in this. But I think the delusional part was the belief, quite clearly the belief, that this would be a one-day operation in Iran, kill the supreme leader, kill a number of the top government officials, bring people out onto the streets, overthrow the government, and the rest would follow. And I think Trump was really, in his mind, modeling this on what happened actually, to my surprise, by the way, in Venezuela, which is that the president was kidnapped and brought to the United States, and the vice president more or less has played along with the United States, some to Venezuela's advantage because they had been under sanctions and the U.S. stopped the sanctioning of Venezuelan oil, but a lot to America's advantage. Well, Trump thought he would do the same with Iran. What a prize. Trump loves oil. He loves money. He loves power. He is a partner with Netanyahu, who is a nut in his own way. And Netanyahu and the head of Mossad sold Trump the one-day line, and Trump bought it out of his own ignorance. So when that failed, everything became vastly more complicated because, in fact, as many people suspected, even from last summer's Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran has lots of missiles, lots of drones. The Iron Dome that purportedly protects Israel isn't such a dome and isn't so protective in the end. And what clearly a lot of people knew, but Trump did not even factor in, is that Iran started to hit the Gulf country vulnerable sites, including the U.S. military bases, which, in a way, rather surprisingly, couldn't protect themselves against the Iranian drones and missiles. So I would say a few days into this, though I didn't feel that I could make a definitive judgment because I'm not a military analyst. The military analysts that I listened to thought, well, this is lost. The United States can't win this. The gambit failed. And in a way, we've been in that situation now since February 28th. What has been uncertain is what would Trump do in the face of that failure. And up until last night, one possibility was he would double down on failure, which he has done throughout his life. I wouldn't put it past him to do that at some further stage, but I think there are probably a lot of people around in the Pentagon, the CIA, Congress, who and other countries speaking to Trump, saying, "Don't double down on failure. Find a way out." This, again, this is not crystal ball gazing, and I'm not a 5-day forecaster, but it seems that this is what's happening right now. People asked, well, could Trump pull back? Wouldn't Israel force his hand? I did not believe that. I don't think Israel runs things. I think the United States and Israel are perfectly comfortable being partners in all of this. Israel wants regional hegemony. America wants global hegemony. They're partners, fits together, but I don't think one runs the other, though I do think that we have two con men at the top of these governments, and one con man, Netanyahu, sold a bill of goods to the other con man, Donald Trump, to start this operation. All in all, if you step back from the short-term, very tactical points, this is another demonstration, there are many, but another demonstration that the U.S. is not alone in the world. It's not the global empire. It's not the sole superpower. It's not the indispensable country. It's not the country that can do anything it wants. And one should say that was also proved, again, at great pain in Ukraine, because that was a war to install NATO in Ukraine, and that failed too. So this is another failure with a quote success. It's not a success in moral, legal, human, economic, or any other terms, but a success in tactical terms of the Venezuelan operation, which clearly stoked Trump's ego and his mood to try the same thing in Iran. If I could say one more thing, just to step back, the U.S. in effect has been at war with Iran since 1979. So Trump isn't inventing anything. Not even Netanyahu's inventing anything. He's been at war with Iran for 30 years, but the United States has been at war for 47 years. And that is because Iran used to be part of the American empire. It was brought into the empire in 1953. The U.S. installed what the Persians would call a satrapy. That is a local government that was under imperial rule. That was the Shah of Iran. That ended in 1979, and the United States has been trying to bring Iran back into the fold ever since. The U.S. empire doesn't like countries leaving the empire. It leaves a bad taste, it's resented, and it sends a signal of weakness to other satrapies in the U.S. empire. So the U.S. wants to crush Iran to prove to all the rest, we're in charge, don't even try it. And that's also what's going on in the long term here.
Let's talk about the other satrapies in the region, the Gulf states. The Gulf states are perfect vassals in many respects. There isn't really any significant opposition towards American regional dominance. And the Gulf states are, by my estimation, I would say, much more important assets to America's global dominance. They're oil-rich nations. They have oil and gas fields. But on top of that, they have been diversifying their economies pretty aggressively. And a big part of that is investments in the Western world, specifically in the United States of America. By that design, Don't you think that there is a real divergence in interests? Because it kind of feels to me like, and I might be totally wrong here, that Israel is fine with a weakened Gulf, and if not even a completely destroyed Gulf, which suits their purpose of constantly agitating, going up the escalation ladder against Iran, which is punishing the Gulf states as well as the global economy. Whereas the American interest in this circumstance would probably be to de-escalate and try to create some semblance of regional stability. That's my first question. Do you not feel like there is more, like we're not playing into Israel's hands a little bit? And then the second question would be, what do you think the China play is here?
Yeah, so this is all very well taken. The Gulf countries basically, for a lot of reasons, bet everything on the U.S. And they bet everything on the U.S. And because the U.S. is allied with Israel, most of them bet on the U.S. and Israel, even as Israel was committing genocide in Gaza, for example. And most of the Gulf countries really, even though they had some rhetoric about the Palestinians, didn't really care so much about the Palestinians because, in fact, they had thrown their entire finance, security, economy, supply linkages, technology chains, obviously defense purchases and everything else with the Americans. And it was sad, to my mind. I actually think a number of these smaller Gulf states had done quite a clever job of trying to build a very interesting entrepot economy. I like Dubai. I don't think it's a shell. I think it's clever. They tried to build Singapore on the Persian Gulf. And Singapore serves a very important purpose in the world economy. And I thought Dubai and Abu Dhabi, in other words, the Emirates, was accomplishing something. And same with Qatar and so on. But I also very much was saddened that there was no Arab unity. The Arabic-speaking people, the Arab League, it has been a shell for decades, sad to say, and made that way, of course, by the Americans, because the last thing the United States wants is a strong, unified Arab world. And so when there was a leader of pan-Arabism, Nasser in the 1950s, the United States went out to break him. And this is America's cruelty to the world. If you're going to be successful, you're going to be successful as our satrapy. You're not going to be successful on your own. You're not going to be successful as a regional grouping on your own. You're going to have to do it on our terms. And this is what I do not like about American imperialism over the decades. So all of this is to say, I thought what the Gulf was doing was sad and wrong for years. And I very much regretted the Abraham Accord, which was not just farcical, but tragic, actually. The Palestinians are dying. The Israelis are committing genocide. And yet you have Arab states that are maintaining not only good relations with Israel, but doing business with Israel. And I just find that very, very sad. So last fall, I visited the leaders of a number of these countries, and I wanted to talk to them about these issues, about a stronger Arab League, about stronger pan-Arabism. I believe in it, and I think it's good for them. But I have to tell you, I came away from those meetings absolutely forlorn, because there was no doubt, this is well before the war started, this is late last year, there was no chance that they were going to break with the United States. And not even, I didn't mean to become an enemy of the United States, but not to throw in the whole lot with the United States. And as an economist, I was telling them also, why are you promising, for God's sake, hundreds of billions of dollars investment in the US? Are you kidding? You want high returns? Invest in Africa. Invest in your own region. Invest in the emerging economies, which grow a lot faster. Why do you promise Donald Trump hundreds of billions of dollars of your money? It's not the return that you it's not what you're going to get. But from a security point of view, their mind was entirely on the United States. We are part of that world. That's our world. China, even if we're part of the BRICS like the Emirates, is, maybe someday, but right now it's all America. Okay, this has completely dispelled that, I think. I really think the events of the last weeks has been a shocking reality to these countries. No protection at all. The U.S. military bases are magnets for the bombs. And the United States didn't do anything to protect these countries. And it's probably why yesterday Trump backed down, because, in fact, yes, he could have bombed Iran and Iran would have destroyed the Gulf. And probably that would have happened in 2 or 3 weeks. And there was no defense against it. So I think these countries have learned something quite significant. I don't think that we will revisit American hegemony in this region. Of course, there are a lot of things to happen in the coming days, hours, days, months. But I think that the fundamental idea that America runs the Gulf under its empire and we're comfortable parts of that is really gone, actually. Then what does that mean for Israel? Your point was, well, that's good for Israel. This is weakened Gulf. I don't think so exactly, because Israel was benefiting from the fact that these countries were resisting their own public opinion. They were resisting the natural Arab solidarity. They were resisting international law, all to side with the United States and even with Israel. And I think that was a shame. And I can't really see it continuing in the same way. I don't think tomorrow Saudi Arabia is about to join the Abraham Accords. I hope the Abraham Accords end immediately because they're shambolic. But the point is, I don't think that I do think what Israel wanted was defeat Iran cleanly, quickly. You run Iran, we'll run the Middle East for the United States. The U.S. can keep the oil revenues. It can do some of the big play, but we'll run the region. And that has been shot. So I don't see this as a plus for Israel, and not that Israel deserved a plus out of this.
Do you feel like that's a miscalculation on Israel's hand? Because what I was trying to say is that they might want a weakened Gulf, but they don't think clearly about what that might represent for Israel's greater Israel project, its ambitions of territorial acquisition, expansion, continued dominance, and occupation over the Palestinian people. I just meant that this is a tactical misstep from Israel, certainly. But I do think that Israel has engaged in many of those throughout this entire process. I mean, more reasonable people in the American State Department recognized very quickly after October 7 what Israel was doing and what it was about to do, and tried to restrain Israel for its own benefit. And yet their unbelievable appetite for death and destruction, and their vengeance quest, or perhaps their what they calculated as their last opportunity to engage in territorial acquisition before America shuts off the tap, has backfired on them and has, I think, permanently scarred Israel's reputation in the Western world. So
I agree with that, but I think from Israel's point of view, they didn't see it that way up until now. They really thought maybe up until last night, and again, we're playing with hours because there really is a lot of uncertainty. So I don't want to say anything too definitive because I'm so easily wrong on this. But just to say, Israel has thought we can be as bloody-minded as we want. because what really matters in the end is two things, is force and American backing. And if we can win on the force side, America will back us fundamentally, because America fundamentally is about force also. And so I think they have thought, well, it's true, every one of our wars is gone for shit, if I could put it that way, from Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Yeah, it's all terrible. You know, the whole region is in flames. But we're still winning, basically. We're winning. There's no one that can stand up to us. And if we can just get rid of Iran, the rest, the flames will die down and we will be in control. And I think that that is the Israeli calculation, that, yeah, it looks bad. Of course, it's bad. Lots of people dying, hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever. But in the end, we're still winning because force is the point and America still backs us. What I think is wrong about this is, first, the force isn't really winning because these flames are not tamped down. And if it's true that America has seen its limit, which I think is likely to be true, that is a major jolt that Netanyahu did not gamble on. And it's not just Netanyahu, it's the whole Israeli extremist leadership. And what is really serious for Israel is that they have lost the support of the American people. And that was quite an operation to pull that off, because the American people, for many, many reasons, for many, many decades, were overwhelmingly supporting Israel, and it's over. And it's not going to come back. And so this is the most fundamental point. Israel does not even have the backing of its only remaining sponsor right now. And that is amazing. When you see major politicians in the United States, not political entrepreneurs pulling on public opinion, but incumbents running against Israel, this is something we haven't seen basically in Israel's history. And I have told the Israelis, I told them in an interview that I did with Haaretz the second week of the war, I said, you're going to destroy Israel if you go ahead and do it this way. And I had a little face-to-face little argument with the Israeli ambassador to the UN a few weeks ago.
Danny Denon.
Yes, and I said to him, my line isn't, you're homicidal. I could have said that. I said, your country's suicidal. What you're doing is devastating for Israel. Yeah. And he did not like it, let me say. But in any event, I don't think that this is a kind of great tactical, keep them fighting, we're better off. I think that this is really, it's bad for everybody. I just see it as lose, lose, lose. I don't see it as lose and win. This is just terrible. I just believe war is disastrous in general, and this is another case of that. As for China, China is extraordinarily clever and well governed. And the main thing China has done since decades is no war. And that will continue. And what they've done with the no war is invest, 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 invest to the point where they dominate most industries of the future now.
Yeah.
So while we play around and listen to Trump's taunts and claims about being the hottest economy in the world, China owns the future of the world auto industry, because it's going to be electric vehicles. They own the future of the world energy industry, because it isn't going to be oil and gas. And so China's just been extremely clever and biding their time and being quite serious, not threatening anybody, and not. It's not right to say they duck these issues. They're for peace and they're also not exactly doing what a cover of The Economist magazine depicted a couple of weeks ago, the famous line that when your enemy's making a mistake, don't interrupt them. China's not happy with this war. China's not happy with any of the wars. Its vocation is technological excellence and being the largest manufacturer in the world. And it would like peace on that basis.
Yeah, they can't trade max if there's no stability, if there's war.
That's it.
China has obviously made attempts pre-October 7 successfully to implement a ceasefire between Iran and Saudi Arabia. China receives the overwhelming majority of its energy needs from the Persian Gulf. All of that transits from the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, this is a major problem for them. So my question to you, Professor, is: do you believe that China could be doing more in terms of aiding Iran to ensure that Iran has an upper hand, or do you feel as though China is actually also telling Iran to restrain itself, as some have observed in this process?
Yeah, today is a very weird, peculiar, interesting day, and it's hard to sort out exactly where we are. But Trump backed down from a renewed attack. He claimed not to back down from the blockade on Iran, but whether there is such a blockade or not is being heavily debated by the hour right now. So it could be just Trumpian rhetoric that is pretty vacuous, because there are also reports of large numbers of Iranian vessels that are coming in and out of the Gulf. So I have to say, it's not precisely clear by any means what's happening now, and it's even less clear what will happen. But what I would say is the following. It looks right now, maybe, that there's a quasi-equilibrium, a fancy term, which means this is not stable, but maybe this can go on for a bit, that enough oil and gas will pass through the strait that the price will stay at around $100 a barrel, which is where it is right now. If that happens, it's bad for the world economy, certainly, but it's not a catastrophe. It's not a collapse. Had Trump attacked last night and the oil fields and desalination plants had been destroyed, and that was looking like it could really happen, and maybe still will happen, the price of oil would be at $140 a barrel today and heading higher. So there may be right now a tacit equilibrium in which Iran's going to collect some tolls. It's going to restrict some passage. Maybe every few days the U.S. Navy will do something demonstrative to corral an Iranian vessel. But both sides will avoid, I may be dreaming, by the way, but I'm thinking that maybe both sides will avoid worse. And at $100 a barrel, the world economy survives, though people feel pain, but it doesn't go completely into devastating crisis. If that's the case, nobody will do heroics in that case. That would be somewhat open Strait of Hormuz. De facto, maybe not in Trump social, True Social, but de facto. That could go on for a while. It actually could go on for quite a long time. Iran would probably not want to break that by bombing somebody and inviting a new round of war. So that's one possibility for the foreseeable bit. Of course, it would be much better if there was actually some kind of real understanding to close this thing. That's what we should have, but that's quite hard, because the legitimate answer for Iran is that the United States close its bases in the Gulf, that Iran has security. Ultimately, at the core of all of this, well, again, not at the core of all of this, there are two strands that are feeding into this. One is three strands. One is an American revenge strand for 1979. One is an American delusion, let's control the world oil supply strand, which is very Trumpian. And the third is the Israeli Greater Israel plan. We need to dominate the Middle East so we can beat the shit out of anyone we want to beat the shit out of. And the answer to that is the real answer, because that also would get the Israeli instigation of American wars and of their own wars stopped, and that is a solution for Palestine. I happen to believe either the two-state solution or a one democratic state solution. Either one's fine with me, but the two-state solution is the one closest to international law, and I think it should be implemented, and I think it would be the fundamental path to peace, because so much of what's happening is to prevent that from happening. But I don't think that Trump is smart enough, politically capable enough, with a team enough, able to maneuver American politics enough, able to shut down Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir enough. All the things that a real American leader would do. I doubt that even if he wanted to do it, that he knows how to do it. That's the problem.
Yeah. Getting back to, I have two questions. One, Trita Parsi has said that the current limbo state that we're in with the quasi-open Strait of Hormuz, is it open, is it not open, with the double blockade, has given an opportunity to the United States of America to pull back, to retreat without going up the escalation ladder, while still while still refusing to abide by the Iranian terms. So there's almost a quasi ceasefire without a real ceasefire being implemented. Trita suggests that this is actually not so beneficial for Iran, although they avoid utter catastrophe or having their bridges and their power plants blown up by the American military, and then going back into a state of war with the rest of the Gulf nations and Israel, crippling the global energy markets entirely, which would apply more pressure to America and force America's hand back to the ceasefire table. They don't get the demands that they have, even though they have additional leverage at this point. Demands such as sanctions relief, which is the ultimate goal of the Iranian side. I also happen to believe that the primary focus here in terms of restraining Israel is to drive a wedge between America and Israel to a certain degree by using that leverage. I think that's one of the key components of the ceasefire, one of the most difficult ones to achieve as well, considering that I think that there is somewhat of a divergence between the Israeli interests and the American interests here. Like, Israel has its own ambitions, and is
absolutely,
and definitely has the most pliant administration, the most pliant American administration they've ever had, demonstrably so. One that's crazy enough.
Trump has said it. The Israelis pitched it to every president, but I'm the only one that took the bait.
Yeah. Do you also feel as though this is not so beneficial for Iran if there is this quasi ceasefire that's implemented with the potential American blockade on top of the Iranian toll system that's implemented?
Yeah, well, look, I'm a believer in general that actually peace that is negotiated and formalized is mutually beneficial to two sides. I don't believe peace is a win-lose. I believe peace is a win-win if it's well negotiated. So any situation like this, which is just a kind of limbo, to my mind, is not as good as one would get if one had a structured, serious outcome. And so I agree with Trita, the characterization that this is a kind of off-ramp without calling it an off-ramp. Maybe, again, we'll see tomorrow. Everything could be changed. But as of today, that's what it looks like. And that's much better than what it could have been. And as I said, it's livable for everybody. Not great for anybody, but livable for everybody. If what Trita means is, that Iran should press the advantage somehow and force, not settle for this, but force the hand of the United States to come up with the better outcome. I don't know if that's possible. What I believe is the right thing to do is that Iran has put forward a 10-point plan. We don't hear or see much about it. If there is such a plan, which I believe there is, something was published. It looks like there is such a plan. I mean, it's, again, we've seen it, but just to formalize that, Trump, once upon a time, a couple of weeks ago, said, well, this is the basis for a settlement. I would like to see the Iranians say, well, Trump said this is the basis for a settlement. Here's our 10 points. We want to discuss this. And if the United States is ready to discuss this, I still wouldn't do it, by the way, face to face with the United States. I would do it in a multilateral setting. I don't trust the U.S. to negotiate at all face to face. They keep killing people that they negotiate with. But I do believe that it would be possible to put the 10-point plan on the table again, which Trump, in his way, in a True Social post said, is the basis for negotiation. And if the United States says, yes, we're ready to negotiate on that basis, that would be better than this limbo right now. And that's what I would like to see Iran do, because we could get something that is a better outcome for the U.S., a better outcome for Iran, and, I have to say, a better outcome for Israel, but not for Greater Israel. I don't believe in Greater Israel. I believe in Israel living in its borders of the 4th of June, 1967, and an agreement on that basis would secure Israel, and it would secure Palestine, and it would secure peace. So that's what I would like to see.
I was going to say there's different schools of thought here, but one of the things that I have thought about is like, how could this be beneficial for America as far as like generating leverage against China? Because as we both know, China has the nuclear trade weapon, export controls on rare earth minerals that are necessary for the American defense industry and necessary for pretty much everything, right? They have almost complete monopoly. America and the Western world currently has no contingencies against that. They have attempted to develop refinement in places like Australia, I believe, but there is no way for the Australian market to compete with the Chinese one as it stands currently. So my assessment, if I were to try to figure out if there's any logic to what Donald Trump has done in the Gulf so far, which obviously undermines the petrodollar, undermines America's force projection capabilities, has been a spectacular defeat overall, has actually forced our allies in the Asian Pacific region to reconsider how American security contracts look like. God forbid, a similar situation to the Gulf happens against China. It's over for many of these countries. They're going to be a lot more restrained about leaning into American defense going forward. Very beneficial for China. However, is there a positive side to this from long-term American interests? What I've been thinking about quite a bit is the Venezuela action. Venezuela has heavy crude, different refinement, but we do have refineries in the United States of America. The processed Venezuelan heavy crude has the largest known natural oil reserves in the world, if we are to believe the assessment there.
Yep.
Before the Gulf was completely shut off, Venezuelan crude being refined in American refineries would have actually destroyed the small business fracking that we have in the country. Now, with the price of oil barrels going up to $100 and more, do you think that there is an opportunity here for America to become the largest oil exporter to try to make up for the additional lack of supply coming from the Gulf? do you feel like this could be one way to try to generate leverage against China, which currently needs the Strait of Hormuz to open so they can continue getting their energy needs met from the Persian Gulf? Do you feel like America is trying to reroute all of the oil by taking over Venezuelan crude and become like the single largest exporter of oil, which includes sending oil to China instead of straight?
So if I understand the question, first let me say I do think that part of the idea of the whole operation was to control the world oil markets, and the idea was that the United States thinks in its mind, especially post Venezuela, but in general, that we can tell oil producers in the Americas where to send their oil. It's not true, but let's just say that that's the Trumpian mindset. We control the Americas. They thought we somewhat control Russian oil because we turn on the sanctions, off the sanctions, and they kind of work. Not very much, but to an extent. And third, we'll control the Gulf. And again, I think the premise of the operation was one day, kill the leaders. Now we control Iranian oil, and we're back to a comprehensive hegemony of the oil and gas in the Middle East. And if you consider all of America's influence, that's a lot of leverage. And China probably was, in some notional sense, targeted by that. Now, the operation failed, and China will continue to get oil from Iran and from the Middle East. And the quasi-equilibrium or limbo that we talked about is predicated on the idea that enough will flow to keep the oil price at around $100 a barrel. If that's not right, if the price starts rising because there's really a big shortage and the shortage becomes more and more intense, I don't think that limbo is going to hold. We're going to go back to a shooting war or an end of the blockade or something else. So if there is this limbo that holds, it's because the price of oil and the supply remains okay. I mean, less than before, higher price, some pain, but not crushing pain. And China will not be destabilized by a $100 barrel oil, but it would be destabilized by something far worse. So I don't see the current situation as somehow, leverage against China. In general, I just have to be clear, I am a Sinophile. I don't have any idea that we should be, I don't believe we're in any way threatened by China, that we should be attacking China, that we should be trying to limit China. I think the whole thing is like the board game Risk, not the real world. So the whole idea of winners and losers is either video games or, since I'm so old, I used to play board games with physical plastic pieces or actually little wooden pieces in the case of Risk, if I remember correctly. But the point is, I don't even believe this is a legitimate idea. I think the whole thing is farcical and tragic, stupid, let me put it that way. And I don't think China is that we have that leverage, that we turn on and off China's development or its friends or anything else. So I find the whole idea very, very naive. And I don't believe the U.S. has these choke points, which everyone loves to talk about. I don't believe in any of them, by the way. I mean, you're right. If there are any choke points, it's on China's side right now, not the other side. China doesn't actually want to deploy those choke points, but it will if the United States gets too ornery. All of this is to say, yes, there are people that I do not regard as very clever sitting in our government, gaming out how to hurt China. No doubt. I think it's a pretty ignoble job. I wouldn't assign it to graduate students. I would not, or undergraduates. I would not think that it is going to be successful. I notice that most issues of Foreign Affairs magazine now are about economic warfare. I find the whole thing absurd. I mean, not just absurd and sad, but dumb, not accurate, not realistic, not on the likely to succeed, replaying the Soviet containment policy 80 years later in a very naive way against very, very different conditions. So all of this is to say, I don't think the current limbo is anti-China, but if oil prices were to really rise, which they could, this limbo will not hold. Something will break. We'll go back to war, or we'll get a real agreement and we'll end the blockade and we'll get a real opening. Something will give if oil prices continue to rise significantly.
Yeah. The reason why I asked that question is not because I think it's a smart play or it will be successful. I'm just trying to make some sense of what America has done thus far, because it seems so ultimately senseless that, like, if there was any sort of materialist interpretation, materialist analysis here as far as like what America is trying to do as far as its like long-term plan, as it openly says it's trying to wage war against China, our largest trade partner and the manufacturing hub of the entire planet, which, as you also pointed, is very different than the USSR in a very meaningful way, because we've designed this intricate international trade system, and therefore we rely heavily on not just China but the entire Asian markets, and therefore blowing up the Gulf, which provides energy to the entire Asian markets, is a disastrous outcome, and will have many domestic issues that we're already seeing unfold right now, even though America is a little bit more sheltered from the immediate impact. Obviously, it's going to come back as far as like a major inflation crisis when different components that are being manufactured in the Asian markets are unbelievably expensive, and therefore American goods, American commodities are expensive as a byproduct of that.
You know, your question is very good, but I think that I do think the answer is two things. One, the United States made a bad mistake, and I'm just talking about the prediction of outcome. They didn't understand. Second, all of the analysis and all of the gossip and all of the people that I've talked to say that this was Trump's decision, almost alone. So what I see in this is not only kind of a dunderhead decision based on the Venezuela model, if I could put it that way, but also a complete collapse of decision-making processes in the United States, which concerns me a lot. Even things like the National Security Council, interagency assessments, the Director of National Intelligence sidelined. None of it shows what I would regard as a rational process. What we have from all good inside accounts is Netanyahu selling a bill of goods to Trump, Trump buying it, and all the sycophants in the room saying, okay, I'll back you, Mr. President. I don't agree with it, but I'll back you. And Congress dead. So presidents used to consult with congressional leaders, by the way. Even when they were being imperial presidents, they consulted with the heads of the armed services committees, with the heads of foreign affairs, with the Senate and House intelligence committees. None of that happened here. There was no process. Trump is a Dumbo, and he's really collapsed the processes of government. And Hegseth, you know, it's indescribable what this guy has done, and he fired a lot of generals along the way, and nobody seems ready or interested in standing up. Joe Kent did. He said, I resign. But other than that, nobody in Congress in Trump's party said, whoa, this is, except Rand Paul, but I mean, no leader in the party said, come on, are you kidding? What the hell are we doing here?
Yeah. Anthony Blinken has said, and this is one of the only instances where I agree with him,
Yeah.
that
Quoting Anthony Blinken is
yeah.
really something. So go on.
He said this is a game of bullets and it's a game of capital, and I happen to agree with him on this. Where ultimately we're either going to run out of bullets or missiles, which we have diminished a big chunk of our stockpiles for near peer and peer adversary nations like Russia and China. The very fact that we're still using standoff munitions implies that we haven't actually established air superiority in the way that Trump likes to claim. And the other aspect of this, of course, is the markets. Do you believe that there is going to be a situation where there's enough pressure from the markets that Donald Trump has to reconsider? And what is the financial engineering? I'm not an economist. I don't understand this aspect of it. But what is the financial engineering that makes this this hard commodity that is necessary for survival? It's a global commodity with inelastic demand, so malleable to Trump's ridiculous manipulations.
Yeah, I think the point is at one point it seemed that it was an attritional argument to who will run out of munitions first. But I think what we see is something a little bit different, which is that Iran has a credible deterrent, which is if you attack us, we will destroy the Gulf.
Yeah.
And it's going to be then the biggest cataclysmic economic crisis for everybody, and we're going to do that. And I think that this is now an argument about deterrence, not about attrition, because there didn't seem to be any way to stop Iran from destroying the desalination plants or anything else. And since they're fighting for their survival, it's quite likely that they would do so, and totally understandable.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what has come out of this in the end, which is that not only could Iran close the strait, but they could do something much, much worse. And no one had an answer to that. And clearly, there was no way that this bombing had degraded the ability to respond, and no reason at all to believe that it would have done so. And the same happened last summer with the first round in June 2025. Iran was not so degraded. So a ceasefire was called after 12 days. And I think that that is the fundamental point. The United States cannot defeat Iran without blowing up the world economy. And Trump doesn't want to do that. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, so far, there's also
so far.
There's also not
right.
Enough troops that the American military might even have to engage in a full blown boots on the ground invasion.
Even if they invaded, again, I'm not your military expert to verify this, but my impression is that it would not take more than a few weeks to destroy the key infrastructure of the Gulf. Desalination plants are not hidden from view. Everything is known where everything is. These are not mobile assets. They are incredibly vulnerable, static assets, and they are life and death assets, actually. So I think that this is, unless somehow secretly, feverishly, and I don't even think it's technically possible, but I don't think it's logistically possible, that all of this is, being protected and souped up with anti-missile systems and anti-drone systems. I think the basic point is there is deterrence.
So the second part of that question also was that Trump is able to game out the markets, and I was wondering how that works for a commodity that is necessary for survival. Because at the end of the day, if there's no barrels of oil being transited through the Strait of Hormuz, even with like spot traders and all of the other, additional room for changing or additional room for sending supply that might not be seen immediately, that's like out there right now around the globe. It feels as though Donald Trump, like the market leans into Donald Trump's statements, even if they know it might not be correct.
Well, I think what the market has been doing, what the market price has been signaling is the expectation of the strait being opened or not opened. And this other expectation of the Gulf being reduced to rubble or not being reduced to rubble. So I don't think that what is a little bit surprising is how Trump's erratic statements do move the market, but they move the market in a way which makes sense because they're all about the flow of supply and also the capacity to supply based on whether a war will resume or not. So I don't think the markets were moving in directions that were inexplicable. They were moving a lot to statements that turned out to be a lie the next moment. So that's an issue. The president had credibility to some extent that he'd say something, that there are negotiations or we're close to an agreement or something else, and that would move the market. I suspect, again, without any personal evidence of this, that there's a lot of insider front running also, as has been claimed repeatedly, a lot of strange trades made. This is the most corrupt group imaginable. I can't believe that they keep their hands off of this kind of information. So I think that there's front running of announcements and so forth. But basically, the market is signaling the expected sustained flow of oil. And at $100 a barrel, where it is right now, just as before I got on with you, it's signaling that there will be some flow, but less than in the past, but not a catastrophic closure. And no easy, highly likely opening. And that seems a reasonable reading of the situation.
You think, okay, so there's you don't expect there to be a breaking point where we do actually start seeing legitimate shortages, and that this risk is currently priced in at $100 a barrel, because I guess, again, I'm not an economist, but from my understanding, especially when you look at the price of oil in the Asian markets, it's far higher overall.
Yes, spot market, yeah.
Yeah. So
I think the question is, which I can't answer, what is actually the flow of vessels right now? And what I'm hearing is that there's a flow of vessels, that the American blockade isn't really a blockade, and that Iran is letting a lot of ships go through, but on a selective and preferential basis. And if that were not the case, I would expect to see the price at 120 or 125 or 130 pretty quickly. So I look at the price for information about what is, I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, but I'm assuming that I'm learning something from the price about what's really happening in the Gulf.
Okay, so you and I have I guess a bit of a disagreement here. My question was more so under the assumption that the current transit rate is far more restrictive than what it used to be at, as far as like tankers that are passing through that we can see. And I might be totally wrong on this.
No. If you're right, and you very well could be right, I'm not claiming any special knowledge of this, the price will not stay at 100. That's what I'm saying. The price would go to 130, 150, because this, as you said rightly, this is very inelastically demanded, and the price would soar if there is no shipment. So I'm inferring something from the price being at 100 that may not be right. And if you are right, the price will not stay at 100. But I
Yeah.
want to say again, if the price goes to 120, 100, but I
Yeah.
want to say again, if the price goes to 120, 130, 140, this limbo will also not hold. One of two things will happen.
Yeah.
Either the US will really back off and the strait will really open, or we'll go back to a shooting war. Because at 130 or 140, countries really will be asphyxiated in their economy. And we won't just sit there. So that's my point. But you
Yeah.
may be right. Tomorrow we could wake up and it's at 110, and you called it better. I'm reading the market as being accurate and inferring that ships are passing, but
So
maybe not.
I want to float this theory. It's a kooky one. Okay. With the way that the markets are consolidated in the hands of the few, I have this sneaking suspicion that there's a lot of vested interest in stability, even when there isn't actual stability, even when there's tremendous volatility. And I think that it's now become a game where people are leaning into what Trump is saying. I noticed this in the aftermath of the tariffs, Liberation Day as well, where people will put a lot of emphasis on Trump rolling back even a little bit some of the tariffs and the sanctions that he was like floating around
Yeah.
in an effort to ensure that there was market stability. So like it's not necessarily pegged to any sort of real fundamentals at this point, and more so the collective understanding that that the markets have to continue, like that profit margins are relying on believing Trump, even though we know he's unbelievable. He's like not exactly a reliable narrator of the events.
Okay, let me try to put it this way. Uh, two things. First, to judge whether, say, Brent price is a good indicator of what's actually happening, there are 4 or 5 or 6 oil prices that you can refer to, and if they really diverge hugely, uh, first you have to look at the range of them, and second, you can ask whether there's something really wrong with one of these prices. My sense is that that's not the case, that we're seeing something that is pretty real, from West Texas to Brent to other markets. And so I'm not at this stage saying I'm going to stop looking at Brent. It's bullshit, because it doesn't signal what's really going on. Then the second question is, what is $100 a barrel signal? It could signal, what it does signal is the belief in a reasonable flow of oil that is uh, less than normal, but not completely constricted. And I can't tell you whether that's 50% or 80% of the flow, but it means that this is a narrowing, but not an end of the flows, and a pretty significant flow, I would say, relative to the base. And then you could say, yeah, but that's not happening. And you could give two answers. One is, market participants, traders, think that Trump's hand is forced, so it's really going to happen that way.
Mhm.
And if it's not happening today, it will by tomorrow or the next day. Uh, or you could say, what I say is, probably it is actually happening in some physical sense already, as a signal to this, that enough ships are going through, that people believe that there will be a sustained flow. What I don't think is happening, and I don't believe markets like this work that way, is the idea that, God, it needs to stay that way, so I'm going to assume it stays that way.
Mhm.
The only logic of that would be not exactly that, but you could say, it needs to stay that way. So I'm going to assume that Trump will back down if it doesn't stay that way. That's a reasonable, but that's fundamentals then.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of fundamentals about expectations about future supplies. But the idea that we kind of will it, or uh, the press spokesman at the White House makes it happen that way, or participants need it to be stable so it stays stable, I don't think is a right characterization of this kind of market.
Okay. Is there anything that you could see that would cause you to reconsider the rationality of markets in the upcoming weeks? Is there like an event where you say, okay, maybe up until this moment, the futures market was just like relying on a hope and a dream that that Donald Trump is that they knew that Donald Trump was an unreliable narrator, but they still banked on the idea that he couldn't be so crazy, right?
Right.
Is there anything
Oh,
that would
yeah.
break that?
No, but that again is quote fundamentals. A non-fundamentals is if traders were saying this price is insane, but I can't bet against it because I don't know when it's going to stop being insane. That's a bubble. But the idea that this is a bubble doesn't make sense to me. The idea that this is irrationally low and not arbitraged makes no sense to me. In other words, if people believed, oh my God, it's going to soar, you can see that, it's obvious, but they need to keep it low. There'd be 100 ways to arbitrage that, people could make a lot of money on that. So I don't believe that, I believe that expectations could change a lot, but this isn't, to my mind, like Bitcoin prices or tulip mania or a hundred other. I don't believe in the rationality of financial markets per se, but this is a physical commodity that is where you're in touch with users all the
Yeah.
time, and so it's not like uh, a financial bubble or a run on the bank. It's something different, and I don't believe that we're seeing a bubble in oil, certainly not on the high side. And I don't think we're seeing some kind of psychological need that keeps the price lower than it otherwise would be. I think we're seeing expectations that are complicated right now because we have a completely unpredictable president. We have a volatile situation. We don't even know literally whether there is a blockade or isn't a blockade. We don't know any of these things. And I spend a lot of time listening to people commenting on this throughout the day, and there's just a lot of speculation.
Yeah. Let's get back to China before I let you go.
We're gonna have to stop shortly. But I love talking to you. That's
Yeah.
good. But I'm gonna have to run soon.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much for all the time. Last question I have for you is China. People have also accused me of being a cinephile myself. I am fond of certain aspects of what China has done in terms of development. There is, however, one thing that I don't understand as far as Chinese foreign policy, and that is I feel as though they might be a little too restrained in a way that sometimes actually doesn't benefit them at all, even if they're potentially playing the long game. I'm, of course, referencing all of the development and all the projects that they've leaned into in places like Venezuela that almost blow up overnight. And as far as like a similar predicament taking place here in with Iran and in the Gulf as well, because the worst possible outcome here is Trump going back to waging war, blowing up desalination plants, and then Iran retaliating in kind and almost completely collapsing the Gulf oil and gas production, which wouldn't be beneficial for China at all. Do you feel as though there could be more that China could be doing at this moment beyond diplomacy, but as far as like allowing Iran to develop significant deterrence capabilities so that America's hand is forced into the negotiations?
Well, first, I think China's probably pretty active in all of this. Uh, the Pakistani mediation is a China engagement.
Yeah.
And the United States is actually rather happy with that because even in some accounts, the U.S. Wanted China to engage Pakistan to be the mediator.
Yeah.
So I think China's hand is here. Trump actually wants to visit China. This is another very interesting fact. And he doesn't want to go and have a brawl. He wants to go and have a great show of what a great man he is. And so he actually probably doesn't want to blow up things with China over the next few weeks, even for that strange reason. I believe Xi Jinping has a real influence because Trump wants to be a big boy in the world.
Yeah.
And he wants to be with Putin and with Xi Jinping and with Modi and with others. And he likes that. And he really does like that. So I actually think China's probably playing its hand pretty deeply here. I don't think that this is just being watched from afar. I think China's actually pretty seriously engaged. Remember that the Pakistani leader, and I don't remember exactly which one, went to China to issue the 5-point plan, but clearly they talked about a lot of things in detail just before Pakistan's mediation began. So China's view is that they can do a lot quietly. And that's what they do. I don't think that they're neglecting their interests. I don't think that they're abandoning Iran. I don't think that they would be. I don't think they'd be happy with the U.S. victory in this at all. It would not be to their liking to have Israel and the United States overthrow the Iranian government and install a puppet state at all. And I don't think China wants that, and I bet that they work against it.
Okay. Professor Sachs, thank you so much for all the time you gave us today. Is there anything you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out?
No, just great to be with you, and great discussion. Right. I enjoyed it.
All right. I hope I didn't take too much of your time so that we can have you come back on again in the future.
Excellent.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right. That was Professor Jeffrey Sachs, ladies and gentlemen. That was an incredible experience. Very fortunate to be able to have him on the broadcast for as long as we did. JeffSachs.org. I had some other questions I wanted to ask him as well, but we'll leave that for a different time. I specifically wanted to see if there was. I wanted to hear his theory. Mersheimer is going to be on Plaqueboy Mag's Drake listening party stream. I hope that you guys saw the unbelievable amount of restraint I had when he brought up the conversation that he was having with Danny Denon to not do the accent. Okay. There were multiple moments where I wanted to say Harmusi and I stopped myself. There was a moment where I almost hit the no war, just peace.
Not war.
When he was talking about, China wants just peace. And also, like I said, no statements of Harmusi, none of that. So everyone should be proud of me. I did say trade max, but he liked that one. He laughed at that. So also, while we were having this conversation, he was gentle, but he kind of called you stupid on the price of barrel. We'll see. I mean, I am not someone who is a believer in the markets. That's obviously always going to be a major disagreement between myself and Professor Sachs. But I wanted to hear if there was anything that he would see that would cause him to betray his longstanding position that like the markets are a rational force. We're not going to be able to address that obviously in such a short period of time. So